Tonight, taking it to the streets.
I can't breathe.
Across the country, thousands march with a message. They're not against police, just excessive force.
Hands up, don't shoot.
Juliana Goldman and Jerika Duncan report from the demonstrations in Washington and New York. Bagad Shaban shows us the West Coast cleanup as heavy rains, mudslides, and even a twister caused major messes in Southern California. Hold the whole grains and pass the salt. Congress gets set to roll back rules for healthier school lunches. Mark Albert reports. And would a fish by any other name taste as sweet as carp?
Can I have another piece?
Barry Peterson on the name change designed to turn this bottom feeder into the catch of the day.
I said, hey, if you can't beat them, eat them.
This is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening. I'm Jim Axelrod. After the grand jury in Staten Island chose not to indict a police officer in the chokehold death of Eric Garner, civil rights leaders, also disturbed by the events in Ferguson, Missouri, called for a national day of protest. From New York to Oakland and dozens of places in between today came the response. Thousands of protesters demanding better treatment for minorities from police. It was mostly peaceful on the streets today, though demonstrators and police did clash in Boston, where state police arrested 23 people at a highway on-ramp. We have two reports tonight, beginning with Juliana Goldman in Washington.
Jim, organizers say tens of thousands of people gathered here today. They came from all walks of life to protest the deaths of unarmed black men and boys at the hands of law enforcement. Their message for the nation's leaders: that the status quo is unacceptable. Standing side by side, the families of Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and Trayvon Martin marched down Pennsylvania Avenue to the U.S. Capitol calling for justice. Gwen Carr's son was Eric Garner.
We need to stand like this at all times. And our sons, they may not be here in body, but they're here with us, and each and every one of you. Y'all brought them here today.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Garner was killed in a chokehold by New York City police last July. Earlier this month, a Staten Island grand jury decided not to indict the officer. A week earlier, a grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri reached the same conclusion in the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. Leslie McSpadden is Brown's mother.
What a sea of people. If they don't see this and make a change, then I don't know what we got to do.
Al Sharpton's National Action Network organized Saturday's March for Justice.
We have the same goal, and that is equal protection under the law. And that's not black against white, it's right against wrong.
Sheila Williams marched with two of her sons.
If we don't make a change, then he's going to be one of the Trayvon Martins or the Michael Browns. And I'm trying to come out here and let them see what's going on and hopefully make history.
Juliana Goldman, CBS News, Washington.
I'm Jerika Duncan at the Millions March in New York City. Here, an overflow of demonstrators shut down parts of Manhattan. Families who've lost loved ones at the hands of police led the march, which started in Washington Square Park.
Black Lives Matter.
Signs like this stated Ferguson is everywhere, while the sounds of the crowd added to the calls for a more just society.
Racist cops have got to go, hey, hey!
Nicole Bell was front and center. She's the fiancée of Sean Bell, who was unarmed when police gunned him down in 2006, the morning of his wedding. Nicole says the marches are not about just losing black lives.
Everyone is outraged, and not just because we're black, but because we're human. And we know that this is a human crisis, not just a black crisis. If you look out in the crowd, this is everyone's problem.
30-year-old Matthew McLeod has participated in several marches in the last week.
We are giving voice to something that's important. So if we say something that is then heard by someone else, then yeah, it's worth it for everyone to be here.
People of all races and ages walked side by side.
Hands up! Hands up! Don't shoot!
Police lined the 4-mile route, unfazed by the chants criticizing them. Officer Capers called the protest peaceful.
And it's America. You get to express your feelings. I don't have any thoughts on it at all. I mean, the system will, deal with it, and I'm just here to do my job, just to keep this safe and peaceful.
Don't shoot!
The organizers of the march had a number of demands that include the firing of the officer involved in the Eric Garner case. And Jim, they also want the NYPD to create a training program that specifically addresses police brutality.
Jerika, thank you. Now to the weather on the West Coast, where one meteorologist estimates 10 trillion gallons of rain fell on California over the last 10 days. It was much needed, but in some areas, drought relief came at a huge cost, and it's going to take some time to clean up the devastation. Begat Shaban is in the hard-hit town of Camarillo.
This was a living room at one point. It's almost like quicksand.
Yeah.
Ron Shiraishi tried to salvage what he could from his father's now mud-covered home. One of 10 totally buried when a rain-soaked hillside gave way in their Camarillo neighborhood. It was too dangerous a job for his 86-year-old dad, Jim, who can now barely recognize his house. Early Friday morning, he and his wife could feel their bed floating when mud and boulders crashed through their windows.
At one point, did you think you weren't going to be able to get out of it?
Yep. When it started cracking, the door started breaking down, and the mattress started going up. I said, we're a goner, we're a goner.
Firefighter Nick Cleary helped rescue Shiraishi and his wife.
They were just scared and didn't know what to do. There was no way for them to get out.
The powerful storm also spurred a tornado in South Los Angeles.
It was crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Jamie Mina captured it on his cell phone. As for his neighbor, Lynn Allen,
then I heard the boom. So I ran to the door, and lo and behold, when I look out, I see this tree.
Strong winds uprooted thousands of trees throughout California. This one in Sacramento fell onto Travis Presley's car.
It's a serious bummer, but I'm going to go ahead and say just move on.
Back in Camarillo, Jim Shiraishi says his son had to dig through a foot of mud to find his wallet.
Were you able to salvage anything else?
I don't know. You don't want to look at it. It's that bad.
And this is where the wall of rocks came barreling through from the nearby hillside just above here. And this is actually Jim's roof. We're standing about 10 feet off his backyard. And while the storm that caused all this mess has since cleared, California is now expecting more wet weather on Monday. Jim?
Begat, thank you. Let's bring in meteorologist Lauren Casey from our CBS station WCCO. Lauren, I guess they're not all done with the wet forecast in California, are they?
No, they're drying out for now, but another storm system is brewing over the Pacific and will move onshore tomorrow into Monday and bring another several-day bout of heavy rainfall to areas along the West Coast. Meanwhile, the system that impacted these areas this past week continues to move east and will pose a severe weather threat to portions of the central and southern plains tomorrow, with widespread thunderstorm activity across Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And as a low-level jet or fast winds in the mid-levels of the atmosphere develops, the severe threat will increase into the day. More than 12 million people are under the threat for damaging winds, hail, and isolated tornadoes, including Dallas and Oklahoma City. The greatest risk for a tornado is in southern Oklahoma and northern Texas.
Lauren Casey with a lot for us to keep our eyes on. Lauren, thank you. With a midnight deadline approaching tonight, the Senate held a rare Saturday session today and passed a temporary spending bill to keep the federal government running through Wednesday. The Senate's move put off a decision on a $1.1 trillion spending package passed by the House. Included in the House bill are plans to roll back rules for healthier school lunches. Mark Albert looked into that.
The campaign to make school lunches healthier has been one of First Lady Michelle Obama's signature causes. She even held this state dinner for kids in July.
You all have a right to expect that your hard-earned tax dollars will be spent on food that meets basic nutrition standards. It's as simple as that.
The 2010 legislation she championed took effect 2 years later and added vegetables, fruits, and whole grains to the meals 31 million kids eat each school day. But House Republicans have been trying to roll those rules back because even though they led to healthier and lower calorie and lower sodium meals and potentially lower rates of heart disease and stroke, it came at a cost. Districts paid more than $1 billion a year for higher food and labor expenses. So Republicans this week finally muscled through new rules, fewer whole grains required, and in some cases, a long-term delay to lowering sodium in meals. But in May, the First Lady was adamant any rollback would hurt kids.
You know, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to me, not just as First Lady, but as a mother.
But USDA statistics show kids are rebelling too. Since 2012, 1.4 million fewer kids are eating the lunches. And students have been merciless on social media, tweeting pictures that are less than appetizing. One called this brownish treat mystery mush. Another wrote next to this pile of something, yum. All added the hashtag, thanks Michelle Obama. Diane Pratt-Hevner with the School Nutrition Association supports the rollback.
We've already seen school meal programs having to lay off staff and make tough decisions about, what they're offering in the cafeteria.
Because students are not taking the meals.
Because their students are not taking the meals.
The White House press secretary says the weakening of school lunch rules may not be what the White House wants, but, quote, that's the nature of bipartisan compromise. Jim?
Mark Albert in our Washington newsroom. Thank you, Mark. Sony is in crisis mode. Can the studio survive the fallout from its hack attack? And 12/13/14 was not just today's date. Some folks made it a day to remember. When the CBS Evening News continues. It is not getting any better for Sony Pictures. Today, hackers released another round of embarrassing emails that made communication that was supposed to be private very public. So how can a corporation like Sony recover? Vanita Nair asked a couple of public relations experts.
Mike Paul works with Hollywood executives in crisis.
Sony's in big trouble. To me, this is Hollywood's Edward Snowden moment. And what's a problem with that is we don't know what's coming next.
Today, more emails were leaked disparaging a handful of Hollywood celebrities. The Daily Beast reports the targets were Leonardo DiCaprio and Willow and Jaden Smith. That's on top of what's already been reported. Racially charged emails about the president, documents that reveal movie plots, and embarrassing personal information that was on Sony's computer network.
There's 6,000 emails that are out there. What other things are happening within the company that makes the company vulnerable?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, how bad is this for Sony?
I'd say it's a 9.5.
Media columnist Barbara Lippert.
They can't say anything because it looks transparent and cringeworthy. They need to do things.
Producer Scott Rudin and Sony co-chair Amy Pascal have issued an apology for racist comments made in emails. But Paul says major changes need to be made to prevent investors and talent from going to other studios.
I think the first step is you cut her. Second is you bring in a strong leader who is the opposite of her.
Lippert says corporations are used to throwing money at problems, and she thinks that's what Sony should do. Her advice is to court more black talent and pay to retrain all of the employees. She says that still may not be enough.
What happens to the business that is Sony?
I think Sony's taking a huge hit in its reputation. And it's going to have to do a lot more than have Amy Pascal take responsibility for what she actually said.
Both of the experts we spoke to said the lesson from Sony's misfortune is that nothing is private. Jim, one of the experts, went so far as to say that anything you write in an email at work, you should expect to see on the front page of a newspaper.
Vanita, thank you. Up next, some guys popped the question on bended knee, but this guy used a crashing crane. The name of the game for any athlete is to outperform expectations, and no athlete is doing that any better right now than college basketball player Lauren Hill. Lauren, who plays for Mount St. Joseph's in Ohio, has terminal brain cancer. Her doctors had told her she wouldn't make it to Christmas. Today, Lauren played in her third game this season, her first home game, and she didn't just play, she scored the first basket. Here's a cautionary tale about those over-the-top wedding proposals. This comes from Holland, where a would-be groom brought in a crane to pop the question at his girlfriend's window. But the crane wasn't anchored, and it crashed right through a neighbor's roof. He apparently got points for his efforts, however. His girlfriend said yes anyway. Across the United States, some 21,000 couples are expected to get married today, 5 times the number of any other Saturday this month. That probably has something to do with today's date, which, if you haven't noticed, is December 13th, 2014, 12/13/14. Across the United States, some 21,000 couples are expected to get married today, 5 times the number of any other Saturday this month. That probably has something to do with today's date, which, if you haven't noticed, is December 13th, 2014, 12/13/14. At first glance, this may look like the prototypical Las Vegas wedding, right down to the Elvis impersonator officiating. But Vegas weddings are often done on a whim. Not today.
We had people making reservations for 12/13/14 a year ago.
Ron DeCar owns the Viva Las Vegas Wedding Chapel, Las Vegas's largest. Usually they do 30 ceremonies on a Saturday. Today, they've got 120 scheduled. Sometimes the calendar is DeCar's friend.
The last time that we had a big day like 12/13/14 was 7/7/7. We had 150 weddings, and then 11/11/11 came along. We had 230 weddings in one day.
Jessica Randall traveled all the way from West Palm Beach, Florida.
A friend of mine suggested 12/13/14. I thought that is the most perfect date ever, and he thought the same thing, so we called the chapel the next month.
This bride was lucky enough to snag one of the last of the 30-minute slots.
They actually made this slot for me because they didn't have any. They said you could do any time on Friday, any time on Sunday, but Saturday, we're booked solid. I was like, please.
But if you think it's just the brides who love the calendar karma, don't forget the grooms who are getting some vital help remembering their special day.
Everybody on that date. Everybody on the booking on that date. I think it's because it's easy to remember for me, for the guys.
The wedding chapel owners in Vegas will have to wait another 20 years for a day like this. January 2nd, 2034, 1/2/34. Still ahead, a leap of faith about a leaping fish. We close tonight with a fish wrap. Chilean sea bass were once known as Patagonian toothfish, and orange roughy used to be called slimehead. Name changes made these fish more appealing and eventually more valuable. As Barry Peterson reports, watch out, carp.
Leaping Asian carp are fun to watch, but they're a real threat because they multiply so fast and eat so much, they starve out native fish. They were brought to the American South in the 1970s to eat up unwanted vegetation and ponds, but floodwaters washed them into rivers, and now they're swimming relentlessly towards the Great Lakes. Caught and processed, they could feed millions, but most people consider them trashy, not tasty.
Gonna take these?
Enter Chef Philippe Parola.
I said, hey, if you can't beat them, eat them.
He's on a crusade to get the fish on American plates, starting with a new name, the silverfin.
This is a very great way to have a meal for the family.
His recipes turn distasteful into a delicacy.
Melt away.
It has body.
Correct.
It has flavor.
Correct.
Can I have another piece?
Well, you will get some. You want to call it silverfin. That's the name of it now.
At this fish tournament in